John Loftus. How are you?
Doing fine. Good to be on the show.
Yeah, let's get straight to the to one of the main question. How did you become an atheist?
Oh, I by degrees. One, yeah. I mean, I started as a fundamentalist, and before you know it, I couldn't believe this story in the Bible or that story in the Bible, and I got to realizing that I was a liberal, and then I couldn't believe much of the Bible at all, and I you know became a deist. Well, there must be a God, but that's all. But then I realized that that was just a stopgap measure for faith, and I was looking for evidence, not based on faith. So it was an evolving thing that took place probably for about 6 years, and then after that I became an agnostic for about another 6 years, and then I decided, well, screw this junk. I just couldn't believe anything at all. They needed to, if it had evidence, well, then I'll accept it. I'll judge it as worthy as I can. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But a lot of people just don't have the option with me that I'm ignorant. I'm clearly not ignorant. I could be wrong, but I'm not ignorant. That's what I tell them. And they might think that's a little bit arrogant, but then they haven't read any of my 12 books.
Yeah. Have you considered other religions?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I did as a Christian. I taught classes in alternate religions. And we looked through them, and I found that there wasn't evidence for them. I treated these other religions as an outsider. I wasn't going to give them the benefit of the doubt like I gave my own inherited faith. And so when I didn't give them the benefit of the doubt, they, easily crashed down, and exploded before my eyes. And I didn't see any reason to accept them. They were inconsistent. They didn't have evidence for them. And so I had already done that in some ways. And so, no, I didn't really do that very well. I considered that Christianity was probably the best religion out there. And so then once that came crashing down, well, of course, my whole epistemology changed, and I was looking for evidence, and that's what changed everything for me. And if there's not any evidence for it, then I didn't have any reason to believe any of it.
Some people say that when we ask evidence regarding the existence of God, they quick to accuse us for most of the time that we are materialistic and adhere to things like scientism, which they say that philosophically it's a self-defeating position. What is your response if people say that to you?
Yeah, I think scientism has different definitions. Let's take the one that science is our only reliable guide to truth, I guess. Well, if that's the case, then that's the case for one. If looking for and not finding evidence, it means that we shouldn't believe something, then if we've looked and not found it, and we were honest in doing so, then we should follow the evidence wherever it leads. And if it doesn't lead us to anything, we might become agnostics to some degree about this or that. But scientism as an idea that if you can't accept it by looking into a test tube or under a microscope, well, that's plainly false, because even scientists themselves will say that there's more to be had than just merely under the microscope or in a telescope. You have to assess the data. So there's a reasoning process that goes on along with that. So there's always going to be some reasoning. So I think scientism is a boogeyman. It's to scare Christians away from considering science as a reliable means of gaining the truth.
Why is it scary? Why is it so scary for them?
Well, a lot of them just they have been raised to think that atheism is an immoral position, And if that's the case, then it scares them because they worry what they might do, how they might behave, and and whether or not they can give up hope in the eternal life that they seek to be with their grandmothers or who died, or their uncles. So it gives up hope, and it's a really hard thing for a lot of people. Plus, there's also that fear of hell, the boogeyman of hell. If you die and you're judged an unbeliever, then you might go to hell, which is a bad thing. And that's why, for me, I had to be almost sure I was correct, that there wasn't any truth to Christianity before I could actually finally leave it. Because so long as there was some chance that I might wind up in hell, that was a scary thing. And I was pretty sure I didn't want to. I didn't want to make that mistake. so, it's scary for a lot of people who believe in hell and who look forward to seeing their deceased loved ones, and I get that. Man, I went through that. I was really agonizing over the whole situation as I was considering the evidence for faith.
Um, what was the hardest thing for you to let go when you're deconverting?
Well, I mean, some people might say that you worry about leaving your friends and your your relatives behind, and that's a loss. Some people didn't reject me, and the closer they were to me, the less those people rejected me. They did try to convince me otherwise, um, but that's always a hard thing. But the thing I would miss the most would be, you kind of look forward to a heaven in the sky, and it's gone. You're sorry, it's gone. You can't do it. So I relate it to the idea that well, I never worried about where I was before I was born. And since I didn't worry about where I was before I was born because I wasn't conscious, then likewise when I die, I will not worry about where I'm at either, because I'll be non-existent.
I tend to think that religious people scared about non-existence more than they scared of hell or eternal punishment.
Well, they say not. They say that they're not. It's not about hell. They don't stay because of the threat of hell. They stay because of the love of God. That's what they'll say. But I mean, I know there's a two pronged attack. On the one hand, bliss, and for the Muslims, of course, it's like how many virgins? I don't know where the virgins came from. 70 virgins. They won't be virgins for long, But then what? And besides, where'd they come from? I mean, oh, I'm sorry, this is our punishment. Are they in hell? The 70 virgins. Um, so I find that kind of amusing, but it doesn't really offer anything over knowing the truth, because when you know the truth, you just feel so much better about it. It's like you can look in the universe and you can find beauty and love and the sense of accomplishment. That I can't. I don't have God to thank. I kind of did it myself, more or less, and my genes and my environment. But put them all together, um, you just make a life for yourself, and you can create, do it as you wish, and it's pretty cool. Now, people say, well, you might want to go murder somebody or something like that, or rape somebody, and I just tell them, well, I've always been, since I've been an atheist, I've always done whatever I wanted to do. I just didn't want to do those things. I don't want to do those things.
Yeah, one last question before we move on to the next part. How do you define atheist and how do you define agnostic? And why are you not an agnostic?
Oh, okay. Well, I used to be an agnostic. Usually it means A as agnostic knowledge, non-knowledge. Agnostic is a person who doesn't have knowledge, who claims not to have knowledge. And there are different definitions that will go with that one. And so, I mean, in a sense, all atheists are agnostics, because we're claiming we don't know certain things. What don't we know? Well, we don't know where life came necessarily. I think they're working on it now, of course. And if they can do it, then they'll find out. If they can't, then we don't know. So there's a lot of things we don't know. So we share that with agnostics. When it comes to atheism, it's the same kind of thing. A non-theist. A non-theist is a non-theist, a non-pantheist, a non-polytheist, a non-panentheist, a non henotheist, a non-pantheist. By extension, an atheist is a non-believer. A non-theist is a non-believer, and by extension, a non-believer is best what we describe ourselves when it comes to atheism. We don't believe. We just belief is not one of the things we value or think is important when it comes to believing in a God. So we just don't believe. It's atheism is non-belief, basically. And in a sense, all believers know what it's like to be a non-believer because they don't believe in the other religious faiths that they reject. So they know what it's like to be a non-believer. Why don't you believe in the Muslim faith? Because I don't believe it. Well, why don't you believe it? And they can discuss that. So in some sense, some real sense, really, everyone is an atheist. Um, it's like something like uh, a small atheist, with regard to religions. But I'm a larger atheist because I'm consistently atheist. I'm consistently a non-believer.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on to the next part. Why did you write Unapologetic?
Oh, let me hold it up. That one.
Yeah, that's the book. Yeah.
I was just kind of looking through it this morning, and I was thinking to myself, "Damn, that's a good book." That I shouldn't say that out loud. But it came at a time in my life when I had considered all the arguments I have needed to consider in order to become an atheist, and I became a 7 atheist on the scale of Dawkins' non-belief. You can update your readers about what that is, but he placed belief on a scale of 1 to 7, and 7 being, the most strident, hardcore people who don't really think that there's any chance at all that there's a God. And given from that perspective, I started considering the philosophy of religion, that is, discussions about philosophy in the academic realm, in secular universities in particular, and remembering how I myself treated religion in the secular universities. I gave it warrant. I gave it merit. I gave some arguments consideration. And at that time in my life, I just didn't I couldn't do that. I couldn't treat them respectfully. They all sounded so laughable to me. You name the argument, and pretty much I knew about it, and I knew the flaws in it, and I couldn't understand why people of reasonable character and acumen would accept them, much less and even and discuss them in the university. I mean, we don't talk about um, um, the ontological argument when we're talking about, say, physics. If you study physics, what you do is you do the math. You understand about weights and measures. You understand about the rotations and gravity, and that's what physics is. So nowhere does God play into that in the university. Nor in economics or in other or history. I mean, the historians are my model example of what it's like to do religion. They don't address it. For instance, I mean, we look at Custer's Last Stand, and we don't all of a sudden say, "Well, we can't explain." No, that's an American tragedy. Colonel Custer got wiped out by some Native Americans, and no trace of them. No, not much of trace was left of that company because they just slaughtered them. And so everybody was wondering, well, what happened at Custer's Last Stand? And they couldn't believe that the Americans soldiers with so much better trained men and guns and stuff got wiped out, and but they were all dead, and they couldn't really tell us. So we had to do it based on evidence. But no one ever said, "Well, because God did it," or didn't do it. I mean, no historian will punt to a miracle and say, "Well, okay, God must have done that because we can't explain it." I mean, just think about the ludicrous of that when it comes to being a historian. Well, we can't explain what happened at Custer's last stand, so God must have done a miracle, must have punished us or something. That's not how historians work. They either have evidence for conclusions or they don't. If they don't, they temper their judgments based on the facts. And here we have these facts, and all we can do from these facts is conclude this, and that's all we can conclude. And that's how you should treat religion, I believe. And so do as historians do. But historians will always go with the probabilities, and it's always less probable that a miracle took place than that say that miracle didn't take place. And so then that's why when we look at historical facts, historians do what religions should do, and that is, well, you know what? We really can't conclude a miracle took place. We have some phenomena, we have some interesting stories, but we can't conclude from those that a miracle took place.
Yeah, when I read your book, it gives the impression that you seem a little bit frustrated in some parts of the books. I don't know whether it's your writing style, or maybe there are some things that make you frustrated with some apologetics or philosopher of religion. Yeah, why is that?
Oh, it's a character flaw. I'm always puzzled that people don't see the truth, when I present it to them. I mean, like, "Wha what? It's right here. It's on the table." Yeah, I mean, at that time in my life in 2016 when I wrote this, I was pretty well frustrated because I already put out 5 or 6 books, and, I was interested to see people's reaction, and, Christians would say, "Hey, this is a really good book." They might say that. But I can't I haven't but then they won't change their mind about anything. Some did, of course, and that's always a hard thing. I find it, interesting and challenging to try to convince people of different opinions. It's really a maddening task. Some philosophers are a lot better off because they don't have those high expectations, but I did. And that's what made it so frustrating.
What were the responses of your colleagues when they read your book, The Unapologetic?
Well, the smart ones agreed with me.
I'm imagining they're like, yeah, they say things like, yeah, you give great argument, and I agree with you, but you're a little bit too harsh. None of them say things like that, of your argument.
Well, in every generation, you'll have people who are extremists. And sometimes that extremism is to make a point as hard as possible. And um, the logical result of a lack of evidence for something, and some people will run with it and say, well, then that means you really shouldn't be teaching it in the secular university. And if nothing else, that gets people's attention, gets them talking, and gets them discussing. And so that's what happened. I mean, Nick Trekakis, who is a well-known philosopher of religion, having written a book, God and Belief, as an atheist, and done some collaborative work with Graham Oppy, he recommends this book. He says he loves it. He's a mythotheist, a mythotheist, and that means a God who hates any God who would allow horrendous suffering. That's what a mythotheist. I think I've written that so many times I've never pronounced it. But he recommends it, as does Yaakov Gerke. He's got a PhD in philosophy of religion and an Old Testament studies, and others. I mean, there's some that would. email me out of the blue and say that they just loved it, you know. So, but it's only going to be the atheists who love it because agnostics they might say you're too harsh. Believers, of course, I even say in the book I say you're not going to like this, and I was right. See, I'm not writing to them. See, I know that. I mean, but I'm trying to get the religious believers to understand the different perspectives nonetheless. And so, whether it works well or not, I don't always hear back from someone, but it's been put out on the table.
I actually like the part where you're going harsh actually, because I do have a hard time here having a good discussion with theists about things like philosophy of religion. There is a maybe it's a cultural thing. We tend to have a we tend to start conversations with hospitality, yeah, with approaches like that. We rarely escalate our tone, and we rarely use harsh words when we try to convince others. And because of my softness, I tend to get frustrated many times. And yeah, one of my favorite philosopher, and I consider my own one of my intellectual hero, Professor Graham Oppy. He always sounds so cordial in most of the time. So I think that's the way to approach theists in when we try to convince them, or maybe to offer our point of view. But that doesn't work most of the time in my own experience. But when I see your your writings, I feel a little um what's the right word? Feel a little liberated, feel a little relaxed after I know that we can use this kind of approach. So why I'm asking you such questions, because I want to get assurance that it's okay to be
Yeah,
harsh.
yeah. Um, sometimes like, well, there are a lot of bumpkins um, on sort of on a uneducated side of things that might say, "Well, this is bullshit." Um, when someone of my status says it, then that gets their attention a little bit more, and so that's. And I don't think I use that word, but it's what I'm doing in that book, and so I even say that it's legitimate to ridicule, religious beliefs, but I don't like ridiculing people to their face. I don't really advocate that, but like a comedian who has an audience or, in say, a debate, before an audience, I'm not really one to do a lot of ridicule. However, I do justify it. I say that it's okay. Religion is so bad that it justifies, laughter.
Okay. All right. The next question: is there any part in the book? Is there any message within the book that people seem to miss, that you really want to tell?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, there are 2 points. I'm not calling for the end of discussions about the philosophy of religion. I still think they're useful, just like bad philosophy must be answered with good philosophy. Um, but I am calling for an end to the uh, giving it way more credit than it's due, you know. And so that's why the ridiculing is legitimate, but I don't ridicule. I'm only saying you can do this, and it's that bad, even though I don't really do much of it. It's like say I'm talking. If I were to do that right now, then we wouldn't be even having this conversation. We would just be laughing together. But I'm talking about it reasonably, you see, because I'm giving people who um, you know you don't have the intellectual background that I have. I'm giving permission for them to ridicule, and ridicule has its fruits. um, just like comedians do. You get a lot of people in a room laughing, and you're the only one who's upset. Then you've made a point, you see, because all of a sudden they're going, well, there's a lot of people who think that joke was funny. So, it's I don't, I'm not advocating the ridiculing of beliefs in every case, in all cases at all, but just that it's legitimate, it's a legitimate response. That's one misconception. That's one thing. And the other thing is, I'm not actually calling for the end of the sudden abrupt ending of the philosophy of religion. That's another misconception. Because I realize there are believers in the world that want to discuss religion reasonably. I know they're still out there; they still want to do it, and so you have to engage with some of that. I do so quickly. I think when I hear a philosophical argument, I try to cut to the chase. Now that doesn't always satisfy uh, sophisticated intellectuals because they'll say, "Yeah, well, what about this? What about that? What about this?" So I know that it requires some depth, and I have put out some stuff that is in depth, and I can always just refer to it. Read page 47 here in that book. So I've already done that, but so I can do that. So I realize that there's still going to be some discussions about the philosophy of religion, the needed discussions about the philosophy of religion. In fact, this morning I was finishing up a chapter of a revised book on God and horrendous suffering. Now that's a philosophical argument. I mean, the book itself has scholars and experts, talking about the problem of horrific suffering if there's a good God. Now, see, the one thing about horrific suffering is that the standard theologies don't work. Like you can't say, well, because it makes you a better person, like just suffering in general. No, this is horrific suffering. That's like getting your eye gouged out, staked down in a desert sun um, by people who don't like you, or being, having your leg burned off. No, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about here. And really, when it comes to like building character, is that really going to build character? Sometimes it makes people bitter. And so that's a horrific suffering. The standards theologies don't work. And I have to press them about those sorts of things and make them, the believers, I have to make them grasp the true nature of what we see around the world, including animal suffering. You watch some videos of, a lion taking down some prey or something like that, or spider or whatever. And it's pretty horrific what we see in the world. And so there's a lot of this suffering doesn't provide any way to be redeemed. And if you think that heaven's going to be where you get your bliss, you have to realize that you weren't asked if you wanted to do that. Nobody asked you. No God asked you, hey, you lose both of your legs in a car accident and then I'll let you into heaven? No, I don't want that. Well, because that way you'll get to heaven. No, I don't want to wait for heaven to get that. No, hurts. I don't want it now either. So so I'm doing that. I'm making a philosophical case in that book, God and Horrendous Suffering. It actually should be out in a month or two. It's a revised book, but it's a hell of a book. So I'm still doing philosophy of religion. I did a book previous to this one called The Case Against Miracles, which I think is a really good book myself. Who wouldn't think that if you're the author? Um, and but they get really nice accolades. So, like they get some really important philosophers and theologians and apologists who will say good things about those two books. And so um, that's always gratifying. But they're philosophical arguments, and the reason why is because I'm still dealing with philosophy of religion. It's just that I'm calling for an end that we don't really. I'm trying to end it in such a way that there's no reason, given my book, The Case Against Miracles and God and Horrendous Suffering, to even bother.
Yeah. Can you still hear me? I'm sorry, I was
Yeah,
disconnected for
yeah.
for a second there.
Oh, you missed my
Um,
good stuff. My best stuff.
no, no. I hear you all of the things you said,
Okay.
and yeah, you said that it's a good book, a great book because you're the author. We'll see about that. I'm going to read your book once it's the revised version, right? Once it's released. Yeah. So, the next question. One of my most favorite part in the an apologetic book is when you tell the story about emperor's clothes, invisible clothes. When everyone, it's an invisible cloth that can only see by wise people, if I'm not mistaken. And then most people pretend that they can see it when the truth is
Yeah,
the
the
emperor's
emperor,
naked.
the emperor with no clothes on. That's a story written by Hans Christian Stevenson, I believe. I don't know. I remember now. But the emperor was given a coat by some um, what do they call them? Coat makers, tailors, and said, it's a coat. You only the I think he said I think they say only the intelligent people can see it, or something like that. Only good people can see it. And so he struts his stuff up and down the roads, and nobody else can see the coat either. So he's naked, right? But no
Mm.
one wanted to say that I can't see it, because then it means they have a character flaw. That's something like that. And so he's strutting his stuff up and down the street, and then all of a sudden, some kid out of the blue says, "You're naked." And thus bursting their whole demeanor, although he keeps on walking, I think. Remember, that's how the story goes. But that's what religionists are doing. They're strutting up and down the street, thinking they have a cloak of acuum and intellectual respectability, but they got nothing. They've got nothing. It's just nothing but nakedity. I mean, stripping bare, and there's nothing to it.
That gives the impression that you don't take religion seriously. Is that true?
I'm glad you asked that, because if anybody was to learn of this talk of mine, this interview of mine, they would say to themselves, "Gee, he's taking religion seriously as he talks." I mean, it's really not possible to talk about removing religion from our society in a respectful way, and then turn around and say we shouldn't treat religion respectfully. The only consistent way to do that would be just to laugh at them, which the comedians do, and not take anything they say seriously. So I'm not there. I'm in a halfway house. I'm trying to convince people down the road, maybe a decade or two or three or never, that religion has, or should, that's really the word, religion should have no respectability among the intelligent people. But in order to get intelligent people to take me seriously, I have to reason with them. It's a means to an end.
Mm, I see. Okay. So there's this question asked by my friend to you. He read a lot of your books too. So one of the question he has the questions. The first question is, what do you think of philosopher's God and personal God?
Okay, the distinction between a philosopher's God versus a
Yeah,
personal God.
yeah.
Well, I mean, the only personal God I can conceive of is someone who uh, has a subjective feeling, who the person who has this God is the one who is that God. This person thinks he's got a God, but it's a personal God, and that personal God is him or her, telling him what to do, making him feel good, making him feel bad, directing his thoughts and actions. But in reality, there's no distinction between that personal God and the person who has such a God. The philosopher's God, I think, is built on the personal God. So that's where the emperor with no clothes on uh, analogy is apt, because the philosopher's God, the one we talk about, we might as well be talking about Superman. I mean, Superman, well, look how high he can fly. Look how fast he can go. Look, he stopped a speeding bullet. Now, didn't he just move the Earth to avoid a crash by a big meteor? Well, these are all cartoonish characters, and you can talk about his attributes all you want, how he can like burn a hole with his eyes through metal, or blow a building down. But these are just imagined sorts of attributes that the cartoon creators make, and nothing more, based out of their own personal minds and their own creativity. I mean, I think there's no real distinction, and that it all crumbles down to a personal God, which is simply a subjective God, and a subjective God has different characteristics depending on the persons around the world. If 8 billion people have a subjective God, well, they're going to have pretty close to 8 billion different gods. Or even if it's only 10,000 or 40,000, they're going to have a lot different gods.
His second question is this: do you think it's necessary to learn theology and qualified in talking about that to talk it before we can reject religion?
I'm trying to, I want to, the short answer is no. It's not, you don't have to learn about religion in order to reject it. There's a lot of people who have you ever seen people who they're asked on camera, like a famous star or celebrity, do you believe in God? They say no. I mean, just simply like that. Have you ever believed in God? No. I mean, people do that. They've never believed in God. They were never raised to believe in God. And a lot of Buddhists, I hear, I understand, they were never taught about God. They don't. God doesn't even factor into Buddhism, from what I understand. It's some people believe in God, and some Buddhists believe in God, and some people don't. It's not part of what it means to be a Buddhist. So there's a lot of people who just they don't reject it; they just never accepted it. I think so, but if you have been raised to believe, then I think there's a conscious choice you have to make after you become adult to re-examine the faith you were indoctrinated with for the first time in your life. I ask students to do that. Okay, now you're in college. You need to do something that you haven't been done before. Since everybody has been indoctrinated, usually people get indoctrinated into their different faiths, then now you ought to do for the first time what you should have been doing all along, and that is treating your own religious faith as if you were an outsider, never raised to believe it in the first place, and use the same standards in rejecting your religion as you did uh, when you reject anything else you might have been raised to believe that's wrong. Oh, I was about ready to read. I was about ready to read to you.
Sure.
All right, this is the kind of language you find in my book. I'll hitchhike on Nietzsche's claim that if God is dead, then the philosophy of religion is also dead. She has had an exceedingly long life in the limelight and outlived all reasonable expectations of her life expectancy. It's time for the coroner to sign her death certificate and for the undertaker to bury her deep in the ground. Let's move on. Good riddance. Sayonara. Unfortunately, there are many pseudo philosophers who want to prop her corpse up in a rocking chair like Norman Bates did to his dead mother in Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 thriller Psycho. And like Bates, they continue talking to her as if she's alive, asking her questions and believing she's providing answers too. These people are deluded in a similar way as Bates. What he needed was an intervention. He needed a good, strong dosage of reality and truth based on empirical facts. They do too. These are the facts upon which I base this book. I do so because of all that I know, and I know more than I can manage to tell in one book. I do so in hopes I can help persuade philosophers to give her a proper burial, since there's no longer any reason to pretend she's alive and still talking to people. Pretty
Okay.
serious, huh? That's
Yeah.
pretty serious, huh?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. What do you think is wrong with philosophy of religion?
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about ethics.
Yeah.
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the rational discussion of the characteristics of Superman. Oh no, I'm sorry, God. The rational characteristics of what a God would be like uh, are only are only something we can discuss after we have evidence that such a God exists. And the evidence that a God exists would be something like miracles that are verifiable. And that's where my book, A Case Against Miracles, comes into play because in my book, I mean, miracles by definition have to be something that require a supernatural being, and it's always more probable that miracles did not happen than that they did because of that fact. So we have no reason to believe in a God of miracles, and that's the only kind of God that is worthy of belief. And so there's no reason to believe in God.
So, what do you think is the best way to do philosophy of religion?
Well, I mean, I say so, and that is to debunk it. That's what I'm doing. I mean, I'm doing philosophy of religion only insofar as there's a philosophy of religion still being discussed in a society where the philosophy of religion is not being discussed. No one cares. For them, God is they're indifferent to a God. Then there's no reason to have philosophy of religion either. It's someone raises its head and we laugh at that. So people just go back and just live their lives, work for a living, take care of their families, um, and enjoy what they see in the world. But as far as philosophy of religion goes, its only goal is to show people why it's not worthy of any attention. Now, Hector Avalos, a biblical scholar, he set the model for my model of the philosophy of religion. What he did is he wants to end biblical studies in secular universities. That is, they shouldn't be taught in secular universities. That's what his goal was. He's deceased. He's a great man. Um, and he his whole his book his books just attack the Bible, that it's not worthy of thinking people, not worthy of university classes, and yet he taught university classes the Bible. The reason why he was teaching the Bible in secular classes is to tell his students that that is the truth. The truth is that there's no reason for giving the Bible any merit at all in our society or our universities. Now, and the reason why he teaches that is taught that is because it's necessary to get on with a better life and civilization. And people just don't know the truth, so that's why he's telling them the truth that um, the biblical studies are nonsense. Now, it's kind of a catch-22. You can't just walk away from it. You have to teach what you know. And what you know is that teaching it in a positive manner is not something that should be done. It's just, but teaching it as to debunk it is what should be done, just as I am when it comes to the philosophy of religion. Now, it doesn't, like I say, doesn't mean I don't do philosophy of religion. I've already discussed that. It's just that the only kind of philosophy of religion that merits discussion is the kind that shows this argument or that argument is wrong.
Okay. You seem to respect people like Graham Oppy as a philosopher of religion. What is he doing right?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what he did right. He recommended two of my books. He re- he, he recommended my book "Why I Became an Atheist." That was pretty nice, and then he recommended my book. I think, yeah, another book called "Christianity Is Not Great." He wrote recommendations. They're on the back covers of the books. So yeah, he did that right. But he does other things right. I mean, because to the degree that he offers arguments that lead to the non-existence of God or the non-existence of spirits or gods, and then he's doing the philosophy of religion a service to the degree that he's merely having a discussion with other theists just to have a discussion. Then I don't think he's doing the philosophy of religions justice. One argument in particular that he has made is that he doesn't think that the case against miracles is merit worthy. That is, he doesn't see any reason why someone could be reasonable and yet believe in miracles. And I really come down hard on that disagreement we have. And I do so on a paper that I have online at my page at the secular web. You go to the secular web, type in my name, and you'll see a whole bunch of articles there. And one of them is something like questioning miracles. And you'll see a little section there where I talk about Graham Oppy's case, where he thinks that he doesn't know any reason why we couldn't believe in miracles, something like that. And so now I vehemently object to that. I think that's giving more credit to miracles than they deserve by far. That's my main contention, that one right there. The other is, so long as he's doing a service and tearing down, citadels of the philosophy of religion, then that's a good thing.
Do you think stance like Graham Oppy should be the default of all philosopher of religion? I think Professor Graham Oppy is quite give a lot of credits towards theism, and I think he tolerates a lot of arguments, the nuances. Do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, 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 sure, Graham is brilliant, and, that's for sure, um, smarter than me. But I still think that, he, and he wrote something on the end of, Philosophy of Religion, which I found interesting, and he did a history of the philosophy of religion for one post I thought I found interesting. So I don't wanna, criticize him and say he's doing anything wrong. I do think that I think that there are certain atheist philosophers that, have been given a lot of merit, um, because they do it well. A guy named, gee, not just Opie, but Sobel and Draper and Schellenberger and, others. And they wanna have a pleasant conversation with theists, and they wanna, um, do that, and I think that, there's merit in that. There's merit in that. I'm not gonna, like, say they should do what I do, so they can keep on doing that. It's good. But I think that, for me, when I was going through my PhD studies and, 3 master's degrees, I majored in the philosophy of religion, and I found that, none of that affected me, and, my beliefs. None of that changed my mind a bit about my faith in Jesus and God and the Bible, Christianity, and the church. None of that. I was in the school for, about 5 years in upper level schools, and none of that affected my faith at all. And so and what did change my mind was studying the Bible. I mean, in depth and theology. And I did have a major in theology for my PhD in Marquette University. Um, but the underpinning of the philosophical discussions about the nature of God are to be they first came out of the Bible. I mean, first they try to make sense of the Bible, but when you try to make sense of the Bible and the theologies built on it, then you realize it's all a house of cards. There's really no evidence for the miracle stories in the Bible that bolster the God that is being portrayed in those stories at all. So then to talk about the attributes of a God that didn't do this miracle here and didn't do that miracle there in the Bible because there's no evidence for that is just having a pleasant conversation because you want a pleasant conversation, which I guess is okay, but the more seriously you treat it, the more you give it credibility too, and that's a double-edged sword that I don't think they'll change at all. But I need to tell them that you need to study the Bible. You need to study theology, I think, and in the history of theology. And I think you'll find that there really isn't any credible evidence for the miracles that we find in the Bible, which form the basis of the religion of the God that you believe in. So,
Is there any theist philosopher that you respect, and why?
well, there are um, well, I actually dedicate this book to some philosophers, and one of them is um, Hector Avalos. He was a biblical scholar. You got Jerry Coyne. He was a scientist. Is a scientist. You got David Eller. He's a anthropologist. These people um, help me quite a bit. Then there's Jacko Garrick. He's a double PhD. Teaches in South Africa. I love his essay. You can find it online. Um, Can God exist if Yahweh doesn't? You just look it up. Can God exist if Yahweh doesn't? I reprinted that in the chapter for one of my books. Another essay he wrote called "Fundamentalism on Stilts." That's how he describes philosophical fundamentalism. The fundamentalism of Alvin Plantinga and George Mavrodes and Nicholas Wolterstorff. Is fundamentalism on stilts. What uh, he says is that all this philosophy is it's a rising above the muck of the Bible and having a philosophy that's on stilts that doesn't get down in the dirtiness of the muck to find out there's no reason to be on the stilts. You see, fundamentalism on stilts. That's a really important essay.
Yeah, but most of them are atheists, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
atheist? Atheistic atheist? Well, I got well, all the ones I mentioned before. I don't have any objection to any of them. No, I mean, I mentioned several of them before. Yeah, those atheist philosophers. Yeah. But I don't know that I would herald philosophy of religion professors with give them more credence than I would David Eller or Jerry Coyne, a scientist, or like David Eller is a great scholar, cultural anthropologist. I have placed them above the philosophers now or biblical scholars like Hector Avalos, because now they are the ones I turn to. Those kind of disciplines are the ones I'm more interested in, or sociologists like Phil Zuckerman, who's done some important research about atheism. So I put on a higher pedestal those kind of disciplines than I do the philosophy of religion disciplines. That's why.
Yeah, but my initial question is, do you have any theist philosopher of religion that you respect, like Alvin Plantinga, for example? Perhaps I don't know. I
No,
think he deserves some respect.
no,
No,
no, no, no,
okay,
no,
okay.
no.
It,
No. That's the main target of Jacko Garricke's essay on fundamentalism on stilts. That's his target was Alvin Plantinga, and he. he makes some important points initially in the book God and Other Minds, where he admits that there are no good arguments for the existence of God. And you read that, that's what he says in half of that. The other half, he says there's no arguments, good arguments for the non-existence of God. So then he proposes, I believe, because I believe we have minds, but you can't see minds. So therefore, believing in minds is the same thing as believing in God. If I can believe in minds, other minds, then I can believe in God. That's the summation of his whole book. So he did get some things right. He admitted there aren't any traditional arguments that succeed from the existence of God, and because of that, he had to come up with another book called 12 or so other arguments for the existence of God. I don't know if you know that, but let's say I think it's 12. A bunch of other arguments for the existence of God. So no, I can't. If I'm calling for the end of the philosophy of religion, then I'm calling for, and I'm saying it's legitimate to ridicule the philosophy of religion, then any philosophers of religion that articulate, on behalf of the philosophy of religion, I have no respect for, no real good respect for. It'd be like watching a chess match. Oh, that was a nice move there. Oh, I saw a chess game last night. Magnus Carlsen just won again in a brilliant finish. But that doesn't change anything. You could see a philosopher of religion make some brilliant arguments and say that's brilliant, but bunk.
Yeah, I was expecting you to say someone like, nah, that's a terrible one. I'm going to say this name for once, and I hope. Okay, I have no hope. I was expecting you to say someone like William Lane Craig, but I guess you.
Oh no, not at all. No, he looks to me. I studied under him. I got one of my master's degrees under him. And he has a uncanny ability to ignore me because I don't know why, but he just absolutely ignores me. Um, and that's his prerogative. But he looks like a used car salesman in his current videos. He's putting out a lot of videos almost every day on Facebook. He puts out a new video, and he has a smirk. The way he talks, he's talking like this, you see, and it's making light of anyone who disagrees. And no, he's not. He's smart. Now these guys are smart. Don't get me wrong. I mean, brilliant. I mean, a lot of these guys are smarter than I am. I mean, I'll admit that. I mean, Swinburne, Flanagan, Craig. Yeah, they're a lot smarter than me, I suppose. And why wouldn't I say that? They are. But that doesn't mean that I respect their conclusions or their arguments. I don't. I can't, especially when I think that religion is destructive to having a good life on planet Earth. Uh, from people who care rather than people who use a cruel God, the one that we find in the Bible, to justify cruelty, which has now become the point.
Okay, I see. Right. The last question for you. What is the future of philosophy of religion in 5 to 10 years from now?
Oh, we're probably the same. I I remember driving with a friend into Fort Wayne, and we got to the busiest intersection in Fort Wayne, and his name was Bob, and he was driving, and he looked over to me. He says, as the cars were whizzing by, he says, "Yep, looks like the automobile is here to stay." so, so, so I'm pretty sure religion's here to stay, at least in my lifetime. Although I think that we've seen some polls that have shown in the last couple of decades religious belief declining among almost every demographic and in certain countries. Although I might have to say that some polls, at least if they're believable, show that religion has taken an uptick in the last few years or so in America. So we'll see how that all works. It's tragic, I guess, but it'll be here. It's not going away. Um, And I'm just here to remind you that there's really no evidence. I'm writing this I'm writing this chapter on God and horrendous suffering, and I'm talking about a little of that evidence. Right now. I hope you guys can take a look at that.
Do you think that you will still be here for the next 10 years to debunk any other apologetical move?
I won't change my mind. I'll still be here doing that. And
Yeah.
I I, uh, I don't think I look. There's a word called jaded. Um, and at this point, I've studied it in the highest levels, and probably taken up from 76, the year 1976 till no, 1973 till now. And I don't suppose I'm going to change my mind anytime soon, given the number of years I've studied this. I don't suppose I'll change too many people's minds, but it's out there, and maybe somebody will resurrect it in 20 years and say, "See, John Loftus said that just what we come to accept now." We'll see. I won't be there probably to know, but we'll see.
Yeah. John Loftus. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.